Ciao e benvenuti all'anteprima del Giro d'Italia. Non indosso pantaloni. Eish. Hello and welcome to the 2020 Giro d'Italia preview. Can you believe it? Less than 2 weeks ago we were crowning the 2020 Tour de France champion. In between that we've had the World Championships and now we've got another 3-week tour starting at the weekend. Don't know about you, but I'm kind of enjoying this little compressed season that we've got going on. It's just wall-to-wall cycling. Anyway, this is the preview for the 2020 Giro. We're going to take a look at a few of those decisive stages that I believe are going to shake up that GC, as well as checking out some of those contenders likely to be taking that top step at this year's Giro d'Italia. So without further ado, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure if you've not done already, you've hit that like button and hit that notification bell so you can stay abreast of all the latest news coming out of the Giro as it happens. Everybody ready? Take it away, voiceover Chris. Now the rescheduled 2020 Giro d'Italia is set to test both man, machine and current COVID protocols. And after the success of the Tour de France, the RCS will be looking to make sure that the Giro runs as smoothly as possible. Some might say as smooth as the snow at the top of the Stelvio, but we'll talk about that one later. Now the revised route of the Giro d'Italia 2020 takes in 3,497.9 kilometres, circumnavigating the whole of Italy from south to north. This revised route also sees the riders setting off from Sicily instead of the original Grande Partenza, which was set to be in Budapest. This year's Giro is made up of 5 flat stages, 7 hilly stages, 6 mountain stages, and 3 individual time trials. And they bookend the Giro at stage 1 and 21, and there's one right in the middle at stage 14. Now we'll take a look at a few decisive stages in depth shortly, but first up, you can't help thinking this tour is going to be suited to those individual time trial specialists. Again, we'll get onto those GC contenders shortly, but with 3 individual time trials, one at the start, one at the end, and that one right in the middle of 34 kilometres, that could be the stage that separates those time trial specialists away from those out-and-out climbers. Now I might have joked about those COVID-19 protocols at the start of the video, however they are extremely important and must be adhered to if we're expecting to get through 3 weeks of a Grand Tour in Italy. Don't forget, at one point during this whole pandemic, Italy was the epicenter of this pandemic and it was just rife within the country. Now they've got it under control, the last thing they're going to want to do is have it break out again and it be the fault of the Giro d'Italia. However, COVID-19 isn't the only thing that could grind a halt to this year's Giro. The weather could play a huge role in postponing, rescheduling, or even cancelling some stages at this year's tour. Now, if we look at when the Giro normally takes place, it's normally in May, and if you look at the average temperatures within Milan, for instance, it ranges anywhere between 12 and 22 degrees Celsius. But in October, they only range from 8 to 18. Now I'm sure you'll agree, if we have dry weather throughout the whole of the Grand Tour and it was between 8 and 18 degrees, no matter where they went, wouldn't be an issue at all. But if we take a look at the current state of the Stelvio that the riders will be passing on stage 18, I believe. Now if we look at the Stelvio only a few days ago, unless the riders are heading up there with shovels on their bike, they're unlikely they'll be getting anywhere near the summit. Now back in the 60s, that wouldn't have been an issue. Riders would have got to the top there, dug their way through that snow and just headed down to the descent. No bother at all. Potentially a few of them might have got killed or died of hypothermia, but hey, that was the price you paid for entering the race. But nowadays, the health and safety executive ain't gonna let that fly. So these riders are gonna get nowhere near that snow if it's still like that in 2 weeks' time. So don't be surprised if you see a route change on stage 18 and the riders don't actually take in the Stelvio at this year's Grand Tour. But how will that play out for the rest of the tour? Could that be a pivotal part if you think back to the 2019 Tour de France? Remember those landslides? Stage 19 had to be cancelled, abandoned. Stage 20 was shortened, and a lot of people still in the comments in these videos say that Egan Bernal has never technically won a full Grand Tour. Me personally, I think he was going to win that one regardless whether they went to the end of stage 19, whether stage 20 was the full stage. But that's a discussion for another time. But just like in 2019 at the Tour de France, the weather could play havoc, especially in October for the Giro 2020. So stay on your toes, expect potential route changes as the riders head into the deepest of Alps in October. It doesn't sound fun. Anyway, let's take a look at a few of those other decisive stages. And it's not normally a decisive stage comes this early in a Grand Tour, but stage 3 provides the opportunity for those GC riders to get a jump on the rest of the field as the riders tackle a summit finish atop of Mount Etna. It's 18.8 kilometers in length and 1,248 vertical meters need ascending at an average gradient of 6.6%. It provides the first opportunity for some attacks for potential GC contenders, as well as an opportunistic attack from a breakaway rider to claim the Maglia Rosa. Now, will the GC riders want that burden of having the jersey so early in the Tour? Or will the teams of the favourites take control of the race regardless of who is in that Maglia Rosa? Next up, stage 14. It's the individual time trial, 34 kilometers. Now this will be the day that will show who has been working on their TT abilities. Expect to see Geraint Thomas taking some time out of his rivals here, either extending his lead in the overall GC or pulling back time on the overall GC leader. I think here is a great opportunity for riders to gain a good chunk of time over their rivals in a much more controlled environment than the climbs coming up in the third week. Again, we just spoke about this stage, stage 18. The biggest question about this one is whether the riders will tackle the Stelvio. If not, there's potential that the riders will be heading up the Mortirolo instead. If the Stelvio is used, expect fireworks on there. The peak of the Stelvio is 38 kilometers from the end of the stage with a Cat 1 climb to finish. However, I dare say, if they're going up the Stelvio, the stage is going to be won and lost on the ascension up there. Now, if you thought stage 18 was brutal with the Stelvio, stage 20 will see the riders climbing over 5,000 meters. 3 of the 4 climbs ascend to over 2,000 meters in elevation. Do I need to say any more? Now, the time gaps that can be created here by the out-and-out climbing specialists should be enough to ensure that even the time trial specialists aren't capable of overturning the gap on that 16-kilometer final time trial in Milan. Next up, and let's talk about those GC contenders. Now, according to the betting market, Geraint Thomas is favourite to take victory at this year's Giro d'Italia, and with good reason. This man was flicked by Ineos Grenadiers when it came to the Tour de France. He was expecting and he prepared to race at the Tour de France. However, a lot of people will say, and I agree, his form wasn't quite where it needed to be. We saw that in the Dauphiné and he took a different route. Essentially, Ineos Grenadiers swapped out Richard Carapaz for Geraint Thomas, meaning that Geraint Thomas was now going to go for the Giro and Richard Carapaz was there in support of Egan Bernal at the Tour de France. Now, I wonder how Richard Carapaz feels about this right now. He potentially could have gone for back-to-back Giro wins, but instead they made him go to the Tour de France, where for him it was relatively a successful affair. He almost won the polka dot jersey, and you can't help thinking with a couple of extra weeks of training in his legs, he could have been coming to this Giro as out-and-out favourite. But luckily for Ineos Grenadiers, they still have the favourite in Geraint Thomas. Next up, Simon Yates, winner of Tirreno Adriatico this year. Don't forget, he's already won a Grand Tour at La Vuelta in 2018. Next up, winner of this year's Il Lombardia, Jakob Fuglsang. He had a great outing at the World Championships. Coming into the final sprint, he was the only rider to have not attended the Tour de France. He looked like he was on good form. He could potentially have a good showing here. However, there's some other riders in that Astana team that could potentially take over the role as main GC contender. You've got Miguel Angel Lopez, he's coming off the back of the Tour de France. What kind of form is he going to be in? Well, it's going to go one or two ways really. He's either going to have found some really good form in the recovery weeks between the Tour de France and the Giro, and he's going to be firing on all cylinders once again, and potentially, if that's the case, he could be the GC leader for this team, or he's just going to die 1,000 deaths. I hope he doesn't, but coming off the back of a demanding 3-week tour, he struggled in that final time trial. But again, it depends on how he's recovered between the 2 Grand Tours. And then on top of that, you've got Alexander Vlasov, 5th at the Tirreno Adriatico. He took the youth classification. He's also winner of the Baby Giro back in 2018. And like we see with these young riders nowadays, you don't need to be 30, you don't need to be 35 to win a Grand Tour. Your peak isn't anymore at 30. These riders are coming in 22, 23, 24, smashing the rule book to pieces. So potentially watch out for him as a GC contender. Next up, Steven Kruijswijk. He was supposed to be attending the Tour de France to be part of that elusive Jumbo Visma team. Could things have been different if Vike had been there? Hey, who knows? If my auntie had a Willie, she'd be my uncle, but she's not. Anyway, can he step up and be a GC contender? He's finished 4th in the past. He's finished 3rd at the Tour de France. This guy is capable of taking a Grand Tour, but is it going to be this one? Does he have enough support from that Jumbo-Visma team, or did they put too many eggs in the Tour de France basket, leaving Vike without the support that he needs? And what would a Giro d'Italia preview be without the mention of Vincenzo Nibali? Personally, I think he's too old and he's past it to be contemplating getting on the podium in Milan. However, you can never write him off. He is the epitome of Italian cycling right now. Now, I know what you're going to say, and yeah, he's not past it, and potentially he could get himself onto the podium. However, I just don't see it this year. And like I've just said, we see the trend nowadays for these younger riders coming through to be attacking, to be aggressive, to be taking stage victories, to be taking Grand Tours. And it seems that if you're over 30 nowadays, you're past it. And I mean no disrespect when I say I think a good result for Vincenzo Nibali would be a top 5. I fully appreciate this is saying that. This rider that wouldn't even get out of a neutralised zone at the Giro d'Italia without getting dropped. However, when you look at the rest of the riders that he's got to race against, I just can't see him finishing on that podium at this year's Giro d'Italia. But Vincenzo, please, prove me wrong, man. And there you go, you're up to speed on everything Giro 2020, well, not everything, but most things Giro 2020. Anything I've left out, leave down in the comments below, get your own chats going. But let us know who you think is going to take victory at this year's Giro d'Italia. Let us know what you think are the decisive stages at this year's Giro d'Italia. Make sure you've hit that like button, make sure you've hit that subscribe button, make sure you've hit that notification bell so you know when we go live with our videos. And then if you've disliked the video for whatever reason, hit that dislike button and slide to the left. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.